For centuries, we've all kind of wrestled with this one massive question. Is the mind just sitting back, grabbing some popcorn, and observing life? Or is it actively out there molding and shaping every single experience we have? Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into this timeless mystery. We're going to explore the fascinating intersections of astrology, psychology, and ancient spiritual traditions to see how our consciousness, our intentions, and even cosmic patterns might actually be the invisible architects of our everyday lives. So, can our thoughts actually influence reality? Look, before we go any further, we absolutely have to address the elephant in the room here. We need to completely bust that whole pop culture myth of instant magical manifestation. You definitely know the one. That idea where if you just close your eyes and think about $1 million really, really hard, it's just going to magically appear on your coffee table. Yeah, no. Actually, when you really dig into the intersection of astrology and psychology, it flat out denies the idea that every single thought just instantly spawns a physical event. The truth is way deeper, and honestly, it's infinitely more empowering than a cheap magic trick. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by asking if mind shapes matter, jump into Vedic astrology and cosmic karma, and map out the birth chart mental blueprint. Then we'll decode manifestation, effort, and timing, take a look at Western astrology and psychology, and finally wrap the whole thing up with the true power of thought. Let's get into it. Section 1. Does mind shape matter? Moving beyond instant manifestation. And that leads us right into Section 2, Vedic astrology and cosmic karma, looking at the mind as an active part of the universe. To truly wrap our heads around how thoughts shape reality, we need to lean into the Eastern perspective for a second, where consciousness isn't just trapped in your head, it's deeply intertwined with the cosmos itself. In the Vedic tradition, your thoughts create these really subtle mental impressions, and they call them samskaras. Honestly, the best way to think about samskaras is like grooves worn into a vinyl record, right? Over time, your repeated thoughts carve out these deep grooves, and eventually they solidify into your core beliefs. And those beliefs, they absolutely dictate your habits, your knee-jerk reactions, and ultimately the actions you take every single day. You're literally building your reality, one subtle little impression at a time. Now, the actual mechanics of this in the Vedic tradition are crystal clear. It tells us that every single action begins with an invisible intention. Those invisible thoughts, they would eventually drive your highly visible behaviors. But here is an absolutely crucial distinction we need to make. Just having positive thoughts alone doesn't guarantee you success. And thank goodness, having negative thoughts doesn't automatically curse you with misfortune. Instead, what Vedic philosophy really hits the nail on the head with is that it's the underlying quality of our awareness that matters most. See, a fearful mind makes choices based purely on limitation, but a highly conscious mind, it spots opportunities and responds with wisdom. So it's really all about awareness, not just forcing toxic positivity. Moving right along to Section 3, the birth chart mental blueprint. We'll be mapping out mental patterns and tendencies. Okay, when we look at this birth chart blueprint, there's a super important thing to keep in mind. Planets are not these cosmic puppet masters pulling your strings and dictating some rigid, inescapable destiny. No way. Think of them more as the foundational lenses through which you just naturally interpret your life. For instance, Mercury represents your core thinking process and how you communicate. The moon, that's reflecting your emotional responses, your deep memories, and your subconscious patterns. Then you have Jupiter, which symbolizes your sheer capacity for wisdom and optimism, while Saturn, oh Saturn, represents the discipline and heavy responsibilities you gain through hard-won experience. Basically, your chart is just describing your own unique internal wiring. Which brings us to Section 4, manifestation, effort, and timing, the true formula for creating reality. So we hear that buzzword manifestation thrown around a lot these days, right? And while a ton of spiritual traditions teach that focused intention basically bends reality toward your goal, astrology steps in and adds this absolutely critical, often totally overlooked variable to the mix. That variable? Timing. It's not just about what you want, it's about when the universe is actually primed to support you getting it. Astrologers spend their time studying planetary cycles, transits, and these things called dasha periods, which are essentially cosmic seasons in your life, to understand when certain specific energies have the wind at their back. Because trying to force something to happen outside of its natural timing, well, it's literally like trying to plant a tomato garden in the dead of winter. It's just not going to work. So rather than just crossing our fingers and relying purely on the raw power of thought alone, True manifestation, at least astrologically speaking, is actually this super grounded sequential combination of four things. First, it takes intention. You gotta know what you actually want. Second, effort. Yes, you still have to put in the actual work. Third is awareness, maintaining the right state of consciousness as you go. And finally, number 4, timing, aligning your actions with those natural cosmic cycles we just talked about. It really takes all 4 of those working together in harmony.
All right, Section 5, Western Astrology and Psychology. We're uncovering unconscious patterns here.
Now, while Eastern astrology leans heavily into karma, Western astrology comes at this exact same phenomenon, but through the lens of modern psychology. It treats the birth chart almost like a treasure map of our unconscious beliefs. Let's actually do a quick thought experiment right now. Imagine someone who, completely unconsciously, just expects to fail. Because of that hidden internal pattern, they are going to unknowingly walk right past perfectly good open doors. They'll avoid opportunities entirely. Now, flip that. Imagine someone with genuine, deeply rooted self-belief. They're naturally going to take actions that lead to a whole bunch of new possibilities. Becoming aware of our internal patterns like this allows us to actually change our responses. And that proves that thoughts do influence reality, but they do it purely through our resulting behaviors and the personal choices we make. Let's look at another example. It's the exact same scenario, but it creates 2 completely different realities. Imagine 2 people facing the exact same major difficulty in life. Person 1, they see a permanent defeat, just a giant, impassable brick wall. Person 2 looks at that exact same event, and they see an opportunity for growth. They see a foundation they can build on. This just goes to show that the world we experience isn't shaped solely by the raw, objective circumstances that get thrown at us. It's heavily shaped by the specific state of consciousness through which we're observing those circumstances. Change that inner state, and you quite literally change your external reality. And here we are at Section 6, the true power of thought. Let's talk about awareness, resilience, and the limits of our control. Okay, we really need to ground this whole explainer with a bit of a reality check. Look, the mind is incredibly powerful, yes, but it absolutely does not control everything. Unexpected stuff, it's still going to happen. Huge collective societal forces play a massive role in our lives. There are circumstances out there that are completely 100% beyond our personal control. And frankly, challenges, uncertainties, and losses are always going to be part of the human journey. The purpose of conscious thinking, and honestly, the purpose of studying your own astrological blueprint, isn't to somehow magically dodge every single difficulty in life. That's impossible. The real purpose here is to develop profound, unshakable resilience so you can face whatever actually does come your way. Ultimately, the best way to look at the mind is that it's simply a bridge. It bridges the gap between your inner consciousness and your outer physical experience. So while your thoughts might not magically spawn every single random event that happens to you, they absolutely dictate the choices you make. They dictate the specific energy you're bringing into each passing moment. Your mind acts as that vital connector between your internal spiritual state and the physical world you walk through every single day. It really all boils down to this one powerful truth from our sources. Transforming consciousness is one of the most powerful ways to transform life. Whether you're looking at it from an astrological angle or a psychological perspective, the takeaway is the same. When your thoughts become more self-aware, more purposeful, and more balanced, your external reality genuinely begins to reflect that beautiful internal transformation. If you change the lens, you change the whole picture. So, thinking back to earlier, remembering those subtle mental grooves, those samskaras, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to ponder. What subtle impressions are shaping your reality today? Take a few moments this week to really examine your own mental blueprint. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. It's been a blast. Until next time, stay focused and stay curious.